Hi, everyone.
I feel like we're experiencing a holy silence as we wait for everyone to come. We don't need to be silent. So Ria, your greeting was welcome to us. It's lovely to see you all. So Kristin, are you going to give us a signal when you think everybody's here or the joining is largely behind us?
Yes, I will. We have folks streaming in right now. We have 27 folks in, and I think that's close to what we said we were going to have.
All right. I'm enjoying the backgrounds that you have, the cathedral background for Adam, the mountains that a number of you show behind you, the ocean, the chapel at Collins, campuses, art, flowers, trees, worship center, books, John Tucker, Mike Benishek. The places where we live our lives and have our ministry. What do you think, Kristin? Ready? All right.
I think you're ready.
Friends in Christ in Oregon and Idaho, welcome this evening. I'm Elaine Stanovsky. I'm your bishop. I hope that's not news to too many of you, but it's been a long time since we've been together. I'm here in the Greater Northwest office near SeaTac Airport in Des Moines, Washington. And this office has been closed except for extraordinary circumstances since, well, for more than a year. And consistent with the Reimagining Life Together protocols for living with COVID, we are socially distanced. There are 3 of us here in this office. We're socially distanced. We have the window open, so you may hear airplanes leaving and coming from SeaTac Airport. But following our protocols, I'm going to take my mask off. I am fully vaccinated and have been for more than a month. And it's a joy to be with you. And I like to see your faces, and I just as soon you be able to see mine as my mask. It's good to be together, to see you, to thank God that spring is coming, has come, that health and normalcy are returning, if slowly, and that God is still at the great eternal work of love and justice that we count on, that we rely upon, that we join by our faithfulness. Welcome. Whether you come from holding your new granddaughter, Ella, as I do, or from mourning the death of your cousin, as Rondelay does, each of us brings the complexity, the joys and the sorrows, the burdens and the delights of our lives every time we meet. Whatever your circumstance, welcome into the presence of God and of God's beautiful global family. We're here to tend the business of the church and to help the church be faithful to God's call and claim on our lives and on our world. So thank you for being here, for bringing all of yourselves to this work. It's sacred time when we're together. God bless us to the work that's before us. A lot of people have done a lot of work over a long time to prepare for this legislative assembly tonight and tomorrow. Let me introduce some of the key organizers, and they'll be more introduced in a few minutes. First, Lori Day. Lori, can you wave your hand so people can see you against the beautiful marbled paper background? Lori Day, Vice Chair of the Assembly, Director of Connectional Ministries, and my assistant in Oregon, Idaho. This is Lori's first legislative assembly. She's been with us for nearly 2 years, but we didn't have a legislative assembly last year. So it must be interesting, Lori, to try and figure out what this animal is and how it's organized and how to do it differently than it's ever been done before, all at the same time. So maybe not having history was helpful to getting it done this way. Reverends Adam Bradell and Ruth Marsh. Can you, Adam and Ruth, wave your hands at us? There they are. Nice to see you, Ruth. Beautiful sunrise or sunset behind you, I'm not sure. Adam and Ruth serve as the legislative coordinators, receive the petitions and help organize the presentation and consideration of the petitions. That is quite a look you have, Ruth.
Yeah, I kind of like the little shiny face and the green thing, but I need to make a special call out to Adam because a number of weeks ago, I called Adam and I said, you know, my life, the plate is bubbling over in so many ways, and I really need to not be worried about if things fall off the plate. And so Adam has actually done the majority of the work to make all of this happen, and I am so incredibly grateful to him. Yesterday, let's see, Tuesday I got a typhoid vaccine, and yesterday I got a shingles vaccine, and today I got a rabies vaccine because I'm going to be traveling to Turkey here in a couple of months, and those. So I am a little bit groggy and thinking, wow, I am just really glad that Adam has been doing so much of this work. So thank you, Adam.
One of the realities of the COVID season is all of our energies ebbs and flows in ways that are unpredictable sometimes. And so it's good to be part of a broader community and hand off, play tag team now and again to free one another for downtime and for whatever it is that we need to be doing. So that's good. And finally, Laura Jakewith Bartlett, deacon appointed as our conference secretary. Laura, thanks again for being here and all that you do to keep our lives ordered. I want to turn now to Lori. I invite you to introduce some of the support team that's working with us tonight.
Thank you, Bishop. Yeah, we've got several people that are working behind the scenes to help us in our planning and really make sure that we do the best we can tonight and tomorrow. So a few people I want to introduce to you. First is Sally Blanchard, and Sally is the office and program manager for the Oregon-Idaho conference. And Sally is helping behind the scenes. She sent you her phone number in case you need some information from her. You can reach out to her. You can also reach out in the chat directly to her or any of us if you need something, and we'll be happy to help you. The next person I want to introduce is Kristin Caldwell. She is our communications manager, and she's helping with the live stream and also many other details. And so if you need something from her, just know that she's there. Tyrone Olds is in the office at the Pacific Northwest office with the bishop. He is a staff person in the Pacific Northwest Conference, and he's really just helping with the tech and the behind the scenes things. He's not on camera, so you're probably not going to see him because he's off to the side, but we are grateful. We are grateful to Tyrone and to the Pacific Northwest office for helping us do this tonight and tomorrow. And then finally, I also want to introduce Rondelay Gabouat, who is Bishop Elaine's executive assistant. And she is also there in the Pacific Northwest Conference office, helping the bishop in whatever is needed. So thank you, everyone, for your help in making this a great legislative assembly. Next, I want to introduce Reverend Jessie Connor. She's the associate pastor at First United Methodist Church in Eugene, and she's going to be leading us in our devotion time tonight. So, Jessie?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Did I press the right button? Excellent. Good, good, good. Well, first of all, I want to start with saying thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to start our time by lighting a candle. This one is Scented the Pacific. I felt like that was a good match, a good Christmas gift from my mom. So I light this candle to remind us that the Holy Spirit is with us in this work. She is powerful and moves in mysterious and wonderful ways. And as I was reflecting on scripture that I'm going to be preaching on this Sunday, it's the story of the third time that Jesus comes to visit the disciples after he is resurrected, and he comes to the shore. And there are two moments that I want to hold up for us. So the first is the disciples had been fishing the full night and had received absolutely nothing out of those waters. And I've been thinking a lot about how this year, a lot of us have felt like we are fishing and fishing and fishing, and we don't know what is happening in those murky waters. So I would love to take advantage of the chat function if you would like to share. And I want to hear from you. Where are some places that you feel like you've come up empty? Where are some places that you feel like you've looked and yet you've still come up empty? So if you'd like to share some of those ideas, you're more than welcome to chat. Put them in the chat. I know specifically for myself, something that feels like it has become empty time and time again is the policing system that we keep encountering, that keeps killing young brown and Black lives, and that we keep fishing and trying to figure out new ways, and yet it keeps coming up empty. I see contacting new people. Thank you, Ted. Finding balance in your life seems to be an impossible dream. Facilitating anti-vissers. Oh, yeah. Reaching out into the community in the midst of a pandemic. Thank you, Steve. Talking with family members who have different beliefs in politics. Organizing to confront racism in the church. Thank you, Jan. And then the other piece of that reflection is that I have something to admit to all of you. And yes, even though I married someone from Alaska, I have actually never gone fishing in my entire adult life. So if you can fix that for me, let me know. But what I finally was like, well, I needed to actually talk to some fishers in our community. And I had the opportunity to talk with someone, and they shared with me a story that when they took their associate pastor fishing for the first time, lo and behold, a salmon jumped out of the river and landed in their lap. The first time they had gone fishing. And I think about then that moment where Jesus appears to the disciples, and then all of a sudden, bam. It's very funny. The scripture says 153 fish were found. And there's a lot of different ideas about those numbers, but the abundance, an excitable and an incredible abundance. And so I want to offer to you another question of where have you found unexpected abundance? Laura, that was the story from you? That's amazing. With Darian Murray, huh? Oh, your son, Kristin. I love when you tell us stories about him in our communications. I enjoy those updates. Congregations being in contact with each other. Oh, grandson Ezra. Thank you, Dan. Oh, yes, the blooms and the buds, meeting new people online, students and other young adults that are interested in justice. Oh my goodness, you guys are commenting so quickly. New pastors, even though we've never worshiped together in person. Eagerness to help unhoused neighbors. Thank you, Adam. Yeah. And so as we encounter both those moments of emptiness and those moments of great and astounding abundance, I wish upon you that you are able to meet those moments with the excitement of Simon Peter. And to remind you of this story, he is fishing, and the story is that he is unclothed. He is fishing, and the beloved disciple, we all wonder who that is, says, "Oh, that's the Lord." And Simon Peter throws on his clothes and then immediately jumps into the water to get to Jesus as quickly as possible. And there are some scholars that say that he might have been in a moment where, like, that's his rabbi, so he has to be respectfully clothed, but he can't wait a minute longer, and so he has to go after it and get in the water. And I think about that moment of when we do have those moments where we experience great abundance, may we be as excited as Simon Peter to jump and run and meet the Lord in where we are. And may we be able to experience that joy. And so may there be a blessing for our time together in Legislative Assembly, that we may be able to find those unexpected abundances and blessings of those who have put in hard work to figure out how our community might be in better relationship with each other. And to that we give thanks. So with that, let us close with a prayer. O great and glorious God of the deep and murky waters, when we search for you in the unknown, may you stand alongside us. And when we come into unexpected abundance, may we rejoice and celebrate and be able to be present with you in that moment. For we know that you are alongside us in the quiet and still night, where we have yet to find hope. And you are with us in that celebration, and you stand beside us. And for that, we are extremely grateful. Be with us this evening as we make hard decisions about how our lives together can be bettered. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Jesse. Oh, great and glorious God of the deep and murky waters. I'm going to hold on to that one. Peer into those waters. We turn now. Adam's going to help us kind of see our way into the work that we have this evening and how we're going to do that work together. Adam?
Thank you, Bishop. I'm going to attempt a screen share here, everyone. So your patience be appreciated here for just a moment. Hopefully, you might be starting to see a slideshow here. And I'll get us to where we'll start together. All right. Excellent, friends. Excellent. Well, thank you for being here. Our time together, so you know, is being recorded and live streamed. We want the millions of followers that the Oregon-Idaho Annual Conference has on YouTube to enjoy this experience and to enjoy Steve Ross's beard. I think that is some really excellent streaming content. I'm grateful for Steve being here. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Let's see. For some of you who've served on Legislative Assembly before, you may notice some. These slides may look familiar. They just kind of get copied forward year over year with little improvements along the margins. Over this time together, mostly tomorrow, we'll be voting on action requests and standing resolutions. and we will be giving you some instructions for how that voting process will work here in a moment. And then while I am running the screen share right now, the conference secretary, Laura, will be our primary screen sharer during this time, and she'll be able to let us look at things like proposed language amendments and substitutions for resolutions. We'll be all be able to look at that together as Laura shares her screen with us. Again, that we expect most of that good work to be happening tomorrow. Little reminder that action requests require the Oregon-Idaho conference to do something or to change one of the rules. That's something that sets an action request apart. They require a majority vote at the annual conference for passage, except for changes to conference rules. And a rule change would require a 2/3 vote at annual conference. We do have some action requests that are rule changes. So we will be mindful of that in our time together. We'll be voting on standing resolutions as well. These are basic statements about what we support and or believe, and they require a 2/3 vote when they get to annual conference to be adopted. We will be establishing the annual conference consent calendar as part of our work today and tomorrow. All action requests and renewed standing resolutions that receive either 90% for or 90% against by you, the Legislative Assembly, will be added to one of the consent calendar's annual conference this year. Then that makes abstentions important. Abstentions count as we vote. So they affect that 10% in favor threshold that we need to achieve if an item is going to be placed on the consent calendar. So with every vote, we will call the yeas, the nays, and the abstentions. When something goes on the consent calendar, that doesn't mean it can never come off. The process for taking things off the consent calendar comes from the rules, and if 40 people would support a motion to remove an item from the consent calendar, then that's what happens. There are some things that are not eligible to go on the consent calendar. Any new standing resolution, we have at least one of those today, or today and tomorrow. And then action requests that impact the budget do not go on the consent calendar, and they will be reviewed by CFNA prior to annual conference after our work concludes here tomorrow. And then when legislation doesn't go on the consent calendar, our job is advisory. And when the resolution comes before annual conference, it will be noted whether the Legislative Assembly approved or did not approve of the legislation. Some of you have already offered up to be shepherds, and I expect more of you to get asked to be shepherds. A shepherd is someone who helps with our parliamentary process. They move the item for action so that we can recommend it for passage or defeat when it gets to annual conference. So we need someone as we come along to each action request and standing resolution to say, Bishop, I move action request number 1, or whatever the number might be. And then once that's done, the shepherd is under no obligation to vote for or against that legislative item. Everyone gets to vote their conscience, and but we appreciate shepherds helping us keep things moving. And so we may ask you also to move those items when we get to annual conference for those things that aren't on the consent calendar.
Before you go, Adam, can I ask you a question? So I live in hope that every legislative assembly has new people in it that have not participated before. So I'm going to ask you a really elementary question, no, basic question, a fundamental question. And that is, could you explain to us what happens to a proposal that is adopted by 90% of the legislative assembly and put on the consent calendar? What happens to it at annual conference?
That's a great question, and the consent calendar will be a compilation of legislative actions that will be voted on en masse by the annual conference when it gathers. And so rather than considering, let's say, the 10 items that are on the consent calendar individually, the body will have a chance to vote on the entire consent calendar and then either support or reject all of those items at once.
And that's without debate, correct?
Correct, Bishop. If,
Yeah.
if you say so, Bishop, yes.
I think that's your rules.
Yeah. This is very good. That's very good. And I do want to absolutely receive questions. There's a slide for that at the end, and we get out of the full screen and can see each other.
Thanks for letting me interrupt, Adam.
Oh, please. Always. Great. We'll do a practice vote here shortly, and that will give you a chance to experience the Get Recognized form. This is what we'll use in our time together today and tomorrow. For each of you, if you ever want to make a motion or ask a question, we have a really handy Google form that's going to enable that, and we'll get to practice that here in a moment. When it comes time to vote, how we vote may feel familiar. If you've ever been to an in-person legislative assembly, you will raise your hand. That is how we're going to vote together. This makes it really important for the voting members of Legislative Assembly to have their video on as much as possible. So we can see you raise your hand and count your votes, but also seeing you is how we will establish that we have a quorum as we go through our business together. So please keep your video on as much as is practical. And with that, I think we'll have a quick practice vote. And I'll exit out of the screen share here as soon as you can see our amendment for the practice vote. Standing resolution number 77 would add a 8th instruction to Wesley's directions for singing, that each Sunday the opening hymn shall be selected for the most recent Taylor Swift album. I'm a big fan of Taylor Swift, and I think more Taylor Swift music on Sundays ought to be a directive to the whole church. And so that standing resolution, Bishop, I move the adoption of SR 77.
All right, SR 77 is before you. So we're going to open the floor for debate. This is all test, right? This is a practice session. And so if you want to speak for or against, or if you have a question, you would enter you would fill out the form that's before you. So somebody be kind and just go ahead and do that. I see Warren Light's hand.
Yeah, I just need a second, I think, right?
Normal. Oh, well,
practice.
Fine, thank you, Warren. You're good. You've done this job for a long time, I know. So let me ask, if there's a second, would you indicate by raising your hand? All right, Warren. Warren, it's been seconded by Warren Light, so it's properly before you. Thank you for the procedural correction there. So the floor is open for discussion, debate, and this isn't as formal a time as we have during the annual conference session. So you can ask curiosity questions. You don't have to. We don't have to be strict in our following of the rules. But if you would indicate what you'd like to say about Taylor Swift and opening hymns, please indicate by filling it. Come on, I need somebody to play along so we can see if the system works. And while you're thinking about what you want to say, piece of trivia, do you know that Taylor Swift's condo is across the street from the upper room? Or was 3 years ago. June Fothergill, I see your hand.
Yeah, I filled out the form, but maybe I didn't do it right.
No, you did. I'm just not paying attention.
Okay.
You're doing great, and I'm not paying attention. So actually, and somebody before you, June. So Mark Bateman, I recognize you.
So I checked, I moved the previous question.
Right. So when you fill this out and you tell me what you're going to do, I see that, but I'm going to recognize you to do it anyway. So this is why we go through it once, is to learn how to do it. So the previous question is before us. Is there a second? Warren Light seconds. And again, because we aren't all familiar with parliamentary procedure, moving the previous question means that you want us to go directly to stop debate and go directly to vote on the question that's before us. So there were other people that wanted to speak, but we're going to first vote on the previous question. If you want to close debate and go directly to the vote on Taylor Swift music for opening hymns, show me your hand. All right, and actually we're using physical hands, Mark. I think people feel it's easier to see. All right, and all those opposed, show your hand. Yes, and any abstentions? So Adam, were you able to count that? Did I go too quickly?
No, this is very good practice. I will need a little more time, and
Okay.
I'm going to experiment here on my end too with hiding non-video participants, because I don't have everybody on the same screen yet. So.
Oh, okay.
It's good.
And Laura, I noticed on yours, your hand, a lot of it was obscured by your name on the tile. So make sure your hands are up nice and high so that we can see them. So Adam, do you want to do this again?
No, I don't think it requires. I've learned the lesson that we do need a little more time. I don't think.
Okay.
Adam, this is Ruth Marsh, and I just want to remind you that I am not technically a member. And so I'm here, you're going to see me, but I'm not going to vote. So please don't count me as abstentions accidentally, because that would make a big mess of our votes.
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, and most of the voting will take place tomorrow, where there won't be as many screens. And that's a good reminder too, is we will ask you to affirmatively abstain. If you just don't raise your hand for at all three asks, that will be problematic for our numbers. So it'll be important that you actively either vote for, vote against, or abstain on each of the pieces of legislation.
So let's just test whether, I see Steve Ross has a question.
Yeah, I just want to really clarify what I think was just raised, which is some of us don't have any vote. We're
Right.
here for another reason. So we're not going to abstain or vote yes or vote no. And so we won't be raising our hand at all, right?
That's correct, Steve. And that's, again, the format tomorrow will be a little different when we're doing the voting. Most, if not all, of the people on the Zoom tomorrow will be people with a vote at Legislative Assembly. I think some exceptions to that are myself and Ruth, and we'll be able to turn off our video when it's time to take a vote. So it's a little less confusing about who's not supposed to be voting when a vote's called.
I believe you, but for example, I expect to be there tomorrow because I'm there to answer if there are questions for trustees, but I'm not a voting member, so yeah.
We'll talk in direct message about that, Steve. I might have received a little different direction from Larry at trustees about that. So.
Okay.
Great. Bishop, I don't have any other slides to share. I can field additional questions about process, or we can move on.
So are there any other questions as you've heard this? And let me be clear, you can ask questions at any point. If a question comes to you that you didn't think to ask now, don't hesitate to raise your hand, and other people will help me see hands that come up. Any questions that you want clarification about right now? We don't really intend to be voting tonight, and I think we will have clarification by tomorrow about how we distinguish between voting members and others who are present. All right. Thank you. So Adam, shall we move into the legislation that's been presented? Oh, Lori, I see your hand.
We skipped over the roll call, so we need to go back to Laura for the roll call.
Yes, we did. Thank you very much. It's highlighted on my script and I didn't do it. So one more important piece. Laura Jacobs Bartlett, Secretary, would you lead us through the roll call?
Yes, I will, Bishop. And this will be a roll call of voting members of the Legislative Assembly. We do know that there are people here who have another role, who are presenting or answering questions, and that is totally fine. We welcome you here this evening as we do our introductory and overview work. But because we are officially beginning as a Legislative Assembly, we are doing a roll call. So it will actually work just like in person, except it's on Zoom. I will call the list of members as I understand them to be. And when I call your name, what I'm going to ask you to do is unmute and to say what role you are playing on the Legislative Assembly. So for instance, I'm Sage District Clergy, or I'm the representative from the Board of Pensions, or I'm here as a young adult, whatever your particular role might be. I'll give you a heads up that I'm going to go in alphabetical order by last name. So that will give you a little bit of a warning, maybe to be ready with that unmute button. We know that we have all been on Zoom for over a year now, and we know that we do still make mistakes when we're muting or unmuting or trying to get our microphone to work or whatever it might be. So A, this will be good practice for us for the rest of our time together. And B, there is grace abundant. If you're having a hard time unmuting and you hear people say, you're muted, please unmute. We will have grace with that, and we'll all help each other through that. So again, I will call your name, you unmute, tell us your role, and then mute yourself again, and I call the next person's name. So here we go. Scott Allen.
Sage District Clergy.
Mark Bateman.
Council on Finance and Administration.
Mike Benischek.
I had to look at the journal to make sure, but Cascadia District Clergy.
Thank you, Mike. Moving the chat window out of my way. Laura Beville.
Here, but I don't remember why I'm here.
Ooh, say Cascadia District Clergy.
Thanks, Cascadia District Clergy. That was my guess. I just was like, oh, I forget.
Sharon Bryan.
The Sage District Lay Leader.
Oh, I just lost my place. Dave Childress is not here, it sounds like. Jesse Connor.
Member of CORE.
And can you tell us what CORE stands for, Jesse?
Of course, the Committee on Race and Religion.
Okay, so the next person has it kind of easy then. June Fothergill.
Commission on Religion and Race as well.
Ria Gallo.
Crater Lake District Lay Leader.
Warren Light.
Crater Lake Clergy, not a young adult.
Carter Liebeck. I'm not hearing Carter. Okay. Cynthia McLeod.
Columbia District Lay Leader.
Right. I think that Larry McClure is not here and Steve is the stand-in, or is that correct or not correct?
That was my directive from Larry.
That is correct, I think.
So if you are here on behalf of the Board of Trustees, Steve, then you, I believe, have a vote, and we will make sure to clear that up before we actually vote.
Thank you. I may made an assumption and jumped to a erroneous conclusion probably.
But you believe that you are here representing the Board of Pensions and not Larry?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I'll call this name, though I don't believe he's here. Dwayne Medicine Crow. Okay. Steve Mitchell. Steve, I was thinking you were here.
He's muted.
Ah. Steve Mitchell, are you here?
There, I am here.
Excellent.
I pressed the space bar, but it didn't unmute. I'm here on behalf of the Conference Board of Pensions.
Thank you. Ted Myers.
Columbia District Clergy.
All right. Jan Nelson.
Conference Lay Leader.
Thank you. Julia Nielsen. I don't think Jules is here. Tom Orquiza Renardo.
Columbia District Clergy.
Okay. Amanda Gale Reed.
Elders. Sorry.
So Amanda Gale, I believe, is the Board of Ordained Ministry representative for the elders.
Yes, thank you. Couldn't remember all that mouthful stuff.
Brenda Seen.
Sage District Clergy.
Right. John Tucker.
I'm your cabinet representative.
And I could hear the smile in your voice as you said that, John. Donna Ward.
The UMW from Oregon-Idaho representative.
Suzanne Wardenar. Is Suzanne here? Okay, sounds like not. Wendy Woodworth.
Hi, Ministry Leadership Team.
Thank you. And Kaylin Wooldridge McLean. Kaylin is not here. All right. So we have our roll call for this evening, and I will do my best, Bishop and Adam, to keep track of people if they may come in as we're moving along.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. My apologies for missing that. And Adam, we're back to you to begin to go through the proposals before us.
Thank you, Bishop. We have an opportunity tonight to go through the packet of action requests and standing resolutions. And a number of the spokespeople who helped with this work are present with us. And so they will each have 2 minutes to share a word about their action request or standing resolution. And then there are 3 minutes for questions that we can ask of them. Bishop, do you want to use this as an opportunity to keep practicing with that Google form, or should we just monitor the Zoom for raised hands and questions?
Well, let's do practice it because we're going to need it tomorrow, and it's not harder in particular. So if you'll use that form that you were given as the presenter presents each item, if you have a question, or we're not going to debate tonight, but if you have a question for clarification to make sure that you're understanding what's intended by the recommendation, by the proposal, indicate that on one of the forms and I'll acknowledge you. Okay.
Great. And I saw Terry is with us. If we were to move in order, starting with action request number 1, Terry is the spokesperson for that action request, and she could have 2 minutes to share with us about AR number 1.
Wonderful, thank you. I will try to be briefer than that. Action request number 1 comes to you from the Oregon-Idaho Board of Ordained Ministry. And this petition is primarily around the Conference Rule 10.011. And we would like to make a revision that allows psychological testing and evaluation we would like to modify the specific cost and in order to make it consistent with our practice, which is that 1/3 is paid by the candidate, 1/3 is paid by the recommending charge conference, and 1/3 is paid by the Board of Ordained Ministry.
This is before you. It's on page 2 of the packet that you received. So is there a second to action? No, we're not doing this now. Excuse me. I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is before you. Do you have questions? I hope that people had a chance to read these ahead of time. If not, I presume you're scanning them as the presenter presents them. Are there any questions? All right, Adam?
Seeing none. Action request number 2, I believe, also comes to us with Terry as the spokesperson. So,
Bishop.
Yes, thank you. So action request number 2, once again, comes from the Oregon-Idaho Board of Ordained Ministry. This is a request for revisions for our scholarship policy. And I would like to clarify that we have received new information about funding around around the ministerial education funds, and we would like to submit an amended version of this for your consideration. And Adam, I don't know if you have that amended language already for them to review or not.
Sorry?
No, go ahead, Adam.
We have received it. We don't have that ready for the group to review yet. It will fit on a nice screen share tomorrow morning when we intend to bring it as a substitute motion.
Wonderful. And just to outline the main changes, the focus on this action request will be around the changes for the licensing school reimbursement in order to focus on basically a cost of living increase from the educational facilities who are providing that education.
So there's no way, Adam, overnight to get it to everyone so they can have looked at it before we consider it tomorrow?
I'll work with Laura on that. I just want to make sure that whatever I send out to Legislative Assembly is consistent with the work she's doing to present it tomorrow.
Okay, great.
I think we can do that.
Thank you.
Yes, and then should I also mention at this time that we'll be submitting the amended action request that will, I'm assuming, maybe remain number 2, but we will also, the Board of Ordained Ministry will be preparing an additional action request prior to your June session once we have all our financial ducks in a row.
All right, and I see that Mark Bateman has a question. Mark?
So just a note, a process note, I actually submitted that question when you asked on the last action item. So I don't know if it's taking a long time to flow through the system. So you might just be aware of that.
Thank you. That's really helpful. We're all paying attention to multiple things, and I'm probably not looking in the right place as often as I should. So thank you. So
if I can, while Terry's still on the hot seat, if I can ask a question about the action request number 1. The addition of certified lay ministry requiring the psychological testing for certified lay ministers. Is anybody who is appointed as laity in that category, or are there people appointed as laity who aren't certified lay ministers? How wide a range of people is this capturing?
So if you want me to get specific numbers for you, Mark, I can do so.
No, it's categories of people that I'm interested in. Is there anybody who is appointed, not assigned? Are all lay assigned in this certified lay ministry category?
No, they are not.
Okay. So people
There are various categories, one of which could be lay servant, but there have been categories where there's been neither designation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
All right, we're back on AR2. And I'm looking to see if there are questions on AR2. No, we don't have that yet. We're getting a substitute on that tomorrow. So if you have questions, hold them. You want to move on, Adam?
Let's go to AR3. And I believe Jan Nelson is with us and prepared to say a word about action request 3.
Thank you, Adam. This one is not quite as straightforward as some of the others. The Christmas Covenant is a proposal to the General Conference. For those of you that don't follow the General Conference, this may be news, and I really hope if you haven't gone to the web address that's in the text of the resolution or of the action request that you will do that before tomorrow. The Christmas Covenant is a package of legislation that may or may not be compatible or not with some of the other proposals to the General Conference, such as the protocol for separation. The Christmas Covenant was written by a group of people from the central conferences. This is highly unusual. In the past, there's very little action suggested from central conferences. And they are being proactive in that they do not want to have the church split. They want to remain in the United Methodist Church. This is a proposal for regional governance. The names of the central conferences would change to become regional conferences, and the United States would also become a regional conference. So the governance of the various conferences would be much more equitable in what they could make decisions about, and what it would be the same across the global church. So at the request of the Central Conference team and the Western Methodist Justice Movement, we are submitting this because they are looking for support from annual conferences. The actual legislation was submitted to General Conference by one of the conferences in the Philippines. But they're looking for other conferences to say, yes, we think this is a good idea. So the actual legislation includes a whole bunch of changes to the discipline and several constitutional amendments. So it's fairly complex. We certainly could spend all day tomorrow debating that. So I hope you'll take a look at their website. They do have all the detailed legislation. They also have some pretty clear statements of what their intent is. And they also have some short videos from people from various parts of the global church about why they think this is a good idea. So I think that's the best I can do for my 2 minutes.
Thank you. Ruth, I see your hand, but I have another question in my queue, so I'm going to take that first. So Laura Baville, you have a question? Would you like to?
It's not really a question, but the link in our legislation is incorrect for that website. And I sent you the thing, but I'll put it in the chat for the correct one.
Great. If you put that in the chat, that'd be a great help. Thank you. And then Warren Light has a question.
Sorry, I knew that and I forgot.
Thank you for that correction.
Yeah, thank you.
Warren Light?
Yeah. Hitting the link that's in the document, our documents, I'm not able to get into anything.
Right. Laura Baville was just addressing
so
that.
that's the same. Yeah, it's the same question. Yeah, thanks.
So she's posting it in the chat and you should be able to, and if that one doesn't work, let us come back and let us know. Okay. And Alan Scott?
Yes.
Scott Allen, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Does supporting or voting for this lock us into supporting a particular solution among others that may be suggested or arrived at prior to and at General Conference?
Jan, do you want to respond to that?
It doesn't lock us into anything because the actual vote at General Conference comes from our delegation. Our statement of support as an annual conference would be a general statement of support. And it asks us to urge our delegation to support it, but we cannot bind the delegation's vote by what we say. So it's I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but it's not binding. As far as whether this is one solution among others, in some ways, yes. Some of the proposed solutions are compatible with each other and some are not.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm not seeing other questions posted. Ruth? I'm sorry, I should have come back to you earlier. Excuse me.
No, it's completely fine. I just wanted to hold up for folks, and this may make a clarification, that this is a piece of our annual conference legislation. There are lots of years, and it's so hard to keep track of General Conference now that we keep on having and not having it. This is not a piece of General Conference legislation. We do not have any General Conference legislation on our docket for Legislative Assembly. This is asking for our annual conference to support a stance that they would have an opportunity to consider the pros and cons of. But like I said, I just wanted to hold up that we don't actually have any General Conference legislation on our docket.
And if I might add, there's a good reason for that, because the Commission on General Conference has not yet extended the deadline for legislation, which passed months before the 2020 session that hasn't happened yet.
All right. Adam, are you ready to move on?
Thanks, everyone. Action request number 4, entitled Calculating Unfunded Pension Liabilities. The spokesperson for that is Jim Fellers, and I believe Jim is with us. Jim,
I am ready. Thanks so much. I will do my best to squeeze this into 2 minutes. A little bit of background is that it comes out of the 2019 General Conference that added 2 paragraphs to the discipline. 2553 spells out a process to disaffiliate, and then 1504.23 seems to require every church to assume unfunded pension obligations. Some churches have already decided to disaffiliate, and some because change happens too fast, and others because it happens too slow. There's a church in Eastern PA, Open Affirming, that's going to cost them almost $700,000 to disaffiliate because of the unfunded pension stuff. So there are a number of components. If you want to go back and review those paragraphs, that might be helpful. But in my document, I refer to the Richland church that closed, and this is what spurred me to see if we could come up with a better proposal. They, for over 20 years, beginning back in '91, paid into the Presbyterian Pension Fund for their Presbyterian pastor, Bill Shields. At the same time, they paid 100% of their apportionments during the time when pension was apportioned. In effect, as I like to think, paying part of my pension, my delayed compensation, which I'm now collecting. So I appreciate their apportionment payments. But it spurred me to say that using the grade point is not an equitable way to compute. I did a little research, South Georgia and some others are not using the grade point to compute. South Georgia looked at about 5 different options. One of the things that's important to remember is that pension is delayed compensation, and compensation is not a connectional responsibility, at least in our denomination. You know, if you're a British Methodist, everyone's salary is the same. It is a connectional thing. When I was pastor at St. John in Anchorage, I didn't expect Moose Pass to pay part of my salary. And, you know, every church you've served, some of you have served, you didn't expect the neighboring church to pay part of your compensation. So I'll just point out a couple things on the addendum number 1. I don't know why I put number 1. It's the only one. There is no number 2. But in case those columns are confusing, the first one, 2019 billed pension, that's straight from the journal out of that column. The 2019 pension grade point then is dividing that billed pension figure by the total paid for the entire conference. And then you take that pension grade point and you multiply it times what West Path has said is an unfunded liability of over $30 million. And that's the liability. The fourth column is the liability of a church if you use our portion grade point. You may ask, well, why does Boise First decrease by over $1 million? Well, the thing about this plan is good for small churches and large churches. The grade point for Boise First includes thousands of dollars in overhead, which is, you know, beyond what is paid for pastoral compensation. So it's not a perfect plan, but I think it moves closer to equity than does using the grade point. It doesn't ask the conference treasurer to identify all the pieces in billed pension, but simply to use what's printed in the conference journal. Alaska, it's printed in their journal very clearly. You really can't find it in PNW, but I know there's a mathematical whiz with Excel spreadsheets that could come up with a pension grade point using billed pension. So that's the proposal.
Thank you, Jim. This is not simple. This is
No,
complicated material.
It's very difficult.
That's right. And so, so Mark Bateman has a question.
So thank you, Bishop. Jim, have you actually done these calculations beyond the samples that you have here for all of the churches? If it's good for small churches and it's good for large churches, then that tells me that the bulk in the middle end up paying more. Have you done that kind of analysis?
No, I've not done all, 200 churches. I just pulled out a kind of representative sample. Yes, there will be some who pay more because it's more equitable, because that's their actual compensation that they paid their clergy, as opposed to a grade point. There's no reason like a large church, Boise First, should be billed for, I guess, a formula that's based on things that are not compensation. See, the thing that has to be paid according to 2553 is the unfunded pension liability. Well, little tiny churches have no liability, really. So that's why South Georgia and others have not used the grade point to figure that amount.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I see Steve Ross.
I want to try and give a little bit of an answer to the question that was asked. This is the churches that are going to have significant increases in the pension calculation form versus the apportionment grade figure form are going to be the ones that spend a lot of money on their pastor relative to their total budget. That's going to put them in that category where a pension liability based on what they paid for pensions is going to be greater than it would be if it was based on the apportionments.
Because I assume the total figure that's trying to be recouped is the same unfunded liability. It's just this is a process for spreading that liability differently across the conference.
That's correct. By the way, the reason I'm a little bit up on this is because the trustees are supposed to develop a plan, and we haven't got one yet.
This may be a spur to action.
Are there other questions? June Fothergill?
I just wanted to be clear. This is for churches who wish to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church.
That is correct.
It's not for every
No.
church in the whole conference.
Well,
It's for
however,
one that specifically
there is
wants
this
to-
paragraph in the discipline that's not clear. 1504 seems to require every church that closes to assume unfunded pension obligations. Of course, it was added at the same time as paragraph 2553, which seems to me they're kind of tied together. And the 1504 shouldn't, in my opinion, shouldn't be applied universally to every church that closes. But that's up to someone else to make that call.
All right, thank you.
Are there other questions? We will, of course, have opportunity to discuss the merits of the proposal tomorrow, so we don't need to worry about that tonight.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Jim. We're going to pause here and take a little break. And I should be looking at how much time we have for this break. We have 10 minutes, so we'll come back at 7:17. Shake your legs, stretch your backs, and we'll see you back at 7:17. Good work.
Laura, can you hear me? Just wanted you to know I'm doing math around, I think we have about 12 more. 2 minutes of presentation, 3 minutes of questions. That's an hour, which isn't too far off of our projected adjournment tonight. So it remains to be seen if someone is here to speak for every item. So I think we're doing pretty good time-wise.
Good. I just wrote down the names of people that I believe are Legislative Assembly members but are not here. Do you want me to email those to you, or what's easiest?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I've been kind of I got a little sheet here where I'm keeping track of that too. So
Okay.
I'd love to see your names.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, let's see if we match up.
So I want to remind us, friends, that we are on the live stream still.
Thank you, Lori.
That's great.
Adam, did you get my note about Carter?
I did. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
just wanted to make sure.
Yep. Got that. No, this has already been a really interesting experience thinking about how things might go at annual conference and scale and all that. So
Yeah, I've got a young adult here at Trinity. I'd like to, that I may take a pop at seeing if I can get them onto annual conference, because it's always difficult to have young adults show up anywhere.
yeah, and Zoom makes it about as accessible as it ever could be in some ways.
But our young adults also have exceedingly busy lives. Oh my gosh.
John Pitney, thanks for being here. It's great to see you. I don't know if your speakers are on. You can hear me, but it's great to see you.
Yeah, I think I'm finally learning how to unmute.
Dangerous for John Pitney to know that. My goodness. Oh, God.
Hi, John. I hadn't seen your cute face yet tonight.
Hi, Ruth March. How are you?
I am well. Just so incredibly busy. My plate is just, like I say, it runneth over. Not only my cup, but the whole plate.
You got to get stuff done before you take off on your renewal leave.
I do. And I'm still haven't gotten a firm commitment from somebody to come and hold down the fort at Trinity while I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was so much of the time where it looked like I wasn't going to get to go, and where other people weren't sure what, things would look like. And so now it's like, we've done that. Hold on. And now it's time to race forward. And so racing forward is a hard place to be in.
Yeah. Are you going to travel?
Yeah, I'm going to travel to the Oregon coast for a couple of weeks and watch the waves. And then I'm going to travel to Turkey and work for a month on an archaeological dig that overlooks the Mediterranean and watch the waves. And then I'm going to travel to Scotland and hike along the Dee River and watch the water go swish, swish, swish. And then I'm going to hike along the eastern seaboard of Scotland from Aberdeen to St. Andrews and watch the waves. And then I'm going to look at a couple of walls, Hadrian's Wall and the Antinian Wall, in honor of my dad, who every time he went on vacation took pictures of fences. So I'm going to look at walls, which at least the Antinian Wall is only like a ditch now, but it's built in the same time as the archaeological dig in Turkey will have taken place. I mean, when that stuff would have been built. And then I'm going to go to London for a few days, and then I'm going to come home to Oregon, to the coast, and watch the waves.
I think there's a theme there, except for the wall. How does that fit?
It's to honor my dad. And it's to physically get from Scotland to London. Because those walls are northern. They are in the very north of England. They're between England and Scotland.
Well, that sounds pretty fabulous. I got to accompany Debbie on her renewal leave a few years ago, and it was pretty great.
Right. If you run out of things, you could swing by here and help run the day shelter and preach up a storm and all of those sort of things. It'd be almost as good as milking the cows while I checked out seminaries.
All right, friends, I'm going to invite you to take your recruitment efforts offline. Though we wish you well on what sounds like a terrific adventure, Ruth. It's fun just to hear you anticipate it. So we wish you well and safe travels and return. All right, we are back. And Adam, remind us where we are.
Thank you, Bishop. We are, I think, about to hear another word from Terry about action request number 5.
Thank you, Adam. So once again, coming to you from the Board of Ordained Ministry, change to our sexual ethics policy to amend the 4th, 5th, and 6th paragraphs to clarify the definition of who needs to take the training and what the requirements are. So primarily just needs to complete 3 requirements outlined here. Complete an annual online knowledge test on the sexual ethics policy, attend one of the sexual ethics abuse prevention and healthy boundaries trainings, and completing the annual disclosure form. So those are the 3 things that we want to clarify that all clergy are required to do. And this includes retired clergy and clergy who are serving. Any questions?
And I see that I have a note here reminding me that some of us in this meeting are in mountain time, that mountain time zone. And I apologize to you for being Pacific time zone centric and failing to be inclusive in that way. And I have always needed this reminder. I did when I was in the Mountain Sky area. And here we are. So my apologies to all of you. So are there questions of Terry? Sorry. All right, then let's proceed.
Action request number 7 is found on page 14 of your packets. And my hope is that Laura might say a word about this action request.
I would be glad to. Echoing my colleague Terry, this comes to you from the Board of Ordained Ministry, and I'm shifting hats for a moment to my Board of Ordained Ministry Administrative Coordinator hat. What I found in my spare reading time as I flipping through the conference rules is that we have a conference rule 10.042 that indicates that when a candidate or a provisional member comes before the clergy session for a membership status change, that it will require a 2/3 vote of the members present. Well, that's great, except that the Book of Discipline very clearly requires a 3/4 vote. So rather than changing the rule to be in compliance with the discipline, we thought, why do we have a conference rule when the discipline already clearly states what the voting requirements are for clergy session as well as for the Board of Ordained Ministries? So our proposal is to simply strike this rule. Not only is it wrong, but if we corrected it, it would be redundant.
All right, any questions? then moving on.
Great. That takes us to action request number 8. A new conference rule. The spokesperson for action request number 8 is Steve Mitchell. I believe Steve is on the Zoom tonight and could say a word.
Steve, you need to unmute.
Zoom screen. Okay.
There we go.
Now I think you hear me. Sorry. The appointed cabinet a year ago asked the Rules Committee to prepare rules that would allow some new church starts voice and vote in annual conference sessions. And this particular one will deal with the church that has been in place, with a new church start that's been in place for at least a year. They would be given one lay member for annual conference membership. And of course, that would apply to the lay equalization, so it would reduce the number of lay equalization members needed. And I might just go ahead and go on to action request 9 because it's very similar. The difference is that it is applied to a new church start that is on a charge with another church. And the new rule there would also allow the new church start to have a lay member of annual conference.
I see Steve Ross's hand.
I just have I think this may be a little bit confusing for some people. In action request 8, this is in the supporting information, not the rule. It says that this action will be carried out by respective charge conferences, but the new starts don't have a charge conference, I don't believe. They're not. So it would be their leadership team or something.
Very good point.
So if that's an issue that we want to correct, we'll do that tomorrow. But somebody might want to come prepared to make that correction.
We'll just make it as a friendly amendment. And actually, that part doesn't appear in the journal anyway, but we should clarify it.
All right. Are there further questions? You're doing really well. We have about 4 minutes per item to get through the items that we have by the allotted time, So you're doing really well so far. So let's keep moving.
That was great. Steve, thank you for addressing both action request 8 and 9. Why don't you take it away on action request 10?
The next action request 10 applies to how the annual conference does deal with the legislative assembly actions. It just assures that when we recommend adoption, we also recommend when a motion is defeated for recommendation by the legislative assembly, that still would be brought before the annual conference session, even if it is not on the consent calendar for defeat. The conference rules do say that the plenary session makes the final determination of all action. And our work is mainly to recommend how the conference plenary will act. Hopefully that's clear enough.
All right. Are there any questions about action request number 10? Laura?
Sorry, I have to get my cursor over from the taking minutes screen to the pictures screen and unmute it. Thank you for your patience. My question is that, as I recall, we have a separate process for late legislation, and that if late legislation is not approved by the Legislative Assembly, then it would not go to the annual conference floor. And I just want to make sure, because this rule doesn't specify for sure that, and I wonder if it might be more clear if the rule did say this doesn't apply to rule number whatever the late one is, or something to that effect. And also I was just asking for clarification because I wasn't sure whether this new rule was meant to supersede the one that deals with late legislation.
Let me suggest, Steve, if you don't know the answer to that question, we could let you figure it out overnight and bring it back to us in the morning.
Yeah, we'll make that clear. That was just intended for the Legislative Assembly now, but I think it's a good point that we should clarify that.
So we'll come back to that in the morning, Steve.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Adam, you want to lead us on? Or are there any other questions regarding AR 10? I don't see any, and there are none in the queue. So, Adam.
Thank you, Bishop. That takes us to page 18 in our packets, action request number 11. I'm watching the participant roster of the Zoom pretty closely, and I haven't seen any of the folk who might join us to speak for this action request. I know that a substitute language has been prepared for this for us to look at together tomorrow. And I see Warren Light would like to share a word. So please, Warren.
Yeah, this legislation, just FYI, everyone, this legislation references Spirit of the Valley United Methodist Church, which was never consulted about it. It references myself and also the Wesley Foundation. We were never consulted about it as well. And I've spoken to the person who is responsible for the legislation, Will Carey, and I believe he's very sincere about the underlying issues. In what he is acceptable to, and I'm hoping that the Legislative Assembly will accept, is an SR standing resolution rather than an action request, which we would have to, at the Wesley Center, oppose because this is not something we wanted to begin with. And that standing resolution, I've given a copy to Adam, and I don't know where you want to go with that, but I wanted to make it clear this is not something coming from us, and yet Will is trying to do something good for a community that's underserved.
And so, Adam, in conversation with Warren, you'll clarify kind of what we need to have before us tomorrow. We don't need to do that right now, but is that a reasonable hope?
Absolutely. And we've sent that language to Laura. We can maybe add that to a bundle that goes out tonight for everybody to look at as well. So
thank you. Good. So I don't think we have, until we see what's coming. This is basically what we have before us is basically, Warren, I think you're saying being withdrawn, and an alternative will come to us tomorrow. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you very much, Bishop, and thank you, Adam.
Thank you. All right.
So that takes us to action request number 12, which is found on page 20 of the packet. Amending clergy housing standards and policy. Mark Bateman is listed as the spokesperson for this. Mark and I served together on CFNA, which has approved this language, these changes to clergy housing standards and policy. It's quite a bit. Mark asked me to go ahead and share a word about this petition. I'm happy to do that. It's quite a lengthy attachment of language. And what we're preparing for tomorrow to share on the screen is this text with the changes highlighted, the changes from current rule highlighted in it. So hopefully that will make it a little easier for everybody to digest what's being proposed in these rule changes, again, that have been approved by CFNA and that they've been working on for some time. If folks had a chance to look at this document and had questions, I could do my best to field those or even take that as homework. So.
All right, AR 12 is before you. Do you have questions? I see June Fothergill.
I was reading through it and I wasn't clear. If a house used to be a parsonage at one time is now being used for other purposes, does it have to be included under these standards and policies?
That's a great question, Jim.
Oh, Adam, my read of the policy is that it does, because it specifically says that it has to have the annual inspection, even if it's not currently being used to house clergy.
Yeah, and that's problematic because there's a lot, at least I have a house that is not used as a residence, it's used in other ways. And it doesn't make any sense to look at it as a parsonage. So I'm just wondering if that could be clarified.
Adam, my sense would be that we would probably need amendment to during the process tomorrow in order to provide the kind of clarification that you're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've made a note about that, and I see Steve. Steve wants to weigh in.
So I want to represent some conference trustees' interests. When a church discontinues, all their property goes to the conference trustees to manage and dispose of. And for that reason, while we may want to do something about standards for a house owned by, or any property owned by a church, I do think an annual inspection of the property would be important so that the conference is aware of what it is going to receive in the event of a discontinuance or abandonment.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, there is. Thank you. Scott Allen.
It seems to me that other than the inspection, the document, the action request deals more with who's responsible than it does change any standards. And is my impression correct?
That's certainly the case in some places in this new language. Absolutely right. It's very intentional, for example, about how it refers to church governance and the decision-making process. And there's some specific language about renter's insurance. So I think that is a fair description of some of the language here, yes.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? All right.
Thanks, team. That takes us to action request 13 on page 23 of your packets. And I see that John Pitney is with us to share a word about this action request.
I am, thank you. In retirement, I'm a participant in Bend United Methodist Church, trying to figure out how to do that with my mask on. I'm also on the board of Oregon Interfaith Power and Light at Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, and the board of the Oregon Clean Power Cooperative. The petition is for the annual conference to join and endorse the Oregon Interfaith Solar Campaign, which is a cooperative effort of Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon and the Oregon Clean Power Cooperative. It is brand new, actually just rolled out in the last couple of months. Because of the partnership with the Oregon Clean Power Cooperative, we are able to offer faith communities affordable ways to invest in solar and solar plus storage. So the action request is for us to join that effort for congregations in the state of Oregon. And if we pass this through the campaign, we would organize 3 or 4 Zoom informational conversations that we hope leaders from every church in Oregon would participate in sometime during this coming fall of 2021. What do churches get out of this? The Oregon Clean Power Cooperative sits down with churches, helps them put together a funding package for solar, perhaps solar with some battery storage. It's affordable because the Oregon Clean Power Cooperative was created by the state of Oregon a few years ago as a way to allow individuals and organizations like churches to invest in solar projects around the state of Oregon. Only about 25% of the roofs, including our church roofs, will qualify for solar. So this isn't just about putting solar on your own roof. It's about investing in solar plus storage, especially for marginalized communities around the state, tribal communities of color, low income and rural communities. So that's what I'm putting forward. I hope I don't have to spend too much time telling you how serious climate chaos is. And this is not only a way to be proactive in reducing our emissions as a church. We are helping establish solar with battery storage in communities around the state. Having battery storage puts us in a better position to serve our communities in times of disaster. And one of the options also is for congregations to buy their power through community solar, which is also a new thing in the state of Oregon, which gives them a way to make a difference.
All right, thank you very much, John. And I see that we have a question from Jan Nelson.
John, as I think you know, the Open Door churches in Salem Kaiser just all got solar panels over the last year or so.
Right.
Would the storage part of this apply? Could we become part of this with the storage aspect, even if we already have the solar panels?
Are you asking, could you add battery storage
Yeah.
to what you have?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
I'm just going to, I noticed, John, that in the action request, you acknowledged that this isn't available in Idaho, that this is an Oregon initiative. But I'm just guessing that if there were if there were United Methodists in Idaho that wanted to get something started, you might be able to help them figure out who to consult with.
Absolutely. There are other projects for churches outside the state of Oregon, and I have made sure to apologize to Idaho congregations in the action request. The Oregon Clean Power Co-op is what makes this affordable, and it's just an Oregon entity.
Great, thank you. Are there other questions?
See a question from Ria.
So I noticed on, it looks like line 36, where it talks about these investments can go to fund solar on your own roof or roofs of others who can least afford it. Is this limited to only congregation buildings, or is this going to be open to individual opportunities as well?
It's not for residential individual. That's for the Clean Power Cooperative exists to get solar systems for nonprofits around the state, including churches.
Are there other questions? All right, let's keep moving.
Thanks, team. That takes us into our standing resolutions. Standing resolution number 1 is on page 25 of your packets. This is a SR, and the spokesperson is Claudia Roberts, who I have seen on the Zoom and would love to hear a word from.
I didn't download the packet, so what's the title?
This is Oregon-Idaho Annual Conference supports sanctuary for immigrants and refugees.
Okay, both of the resolutions I'm talking about or proposing tonight are just they are renewals, and there was no language change made in them. Now, in looking at my copy, I see there was a typo in the journal. I don't know if it was in the original submission or not, under sponsor, where it says Planet Peace with Justice Coordinator. But I'm actually Oregon-Idaho. I don't represent the entire planet. So I think that may have been referring to the Planet Committee that First United Methodist Church had, and but I'm not certain about that. But this is not a change. The issue of sanctuary is still in the news and is still important. We mean sanctuary in the broad sense of making our communities a welcoming place for everybody to live, regardless of their status. So.
All right, thank you very much. We have a question from Michael Benishek.
Yeah, the only question was on the action request.
Oh, sorry. I didn't get to you. I apologize.
No, it took a minute to type it out. My bad.
Well, let me hold on this. We'll finish this one and we'll come back to your question on the previous.
Beautiful.
Action request. Are there questions for Claudia about the immigration statement? I don't see any. All right, so let's go back. Michael, bring your question about John Pitney's proposal.
No, it was more of a just a general question. The sponsoring group, the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, and the Oregon Clean Power Co-op. My understanding is that the only groups that can bring action requests are United Methodist agencies or committees or churches or individuals. John Pitney certainly could be the sponsoring person, but I don't think that an outside group can petition the Legislative Assembly.
Thank you. John, do you want to clarify that? I mean, that maybe partly that's a question for Steve Mitchell, a rules question, right?
Rule 2.039.
Say it again. What's the rule?
2.039.
Okay.
I don't want to get nitty gritty, but I would.
So Adam, can you work with John overnight to resolve this issue?
Absolutely will.
Okay. Thank you for raising it.
Great. That takes us to standing resolution number 3 on page 27 of your packets. And the spokesperson for this is Jan Nelson. The title is Confronting Racism and White Supremacy. Is Jan still with us to share a word about this?
I'm here.
Great.
I don't know how much explanation this needs. I sat down and wrote it one day after a few more killings had happened, and I spent one day in a state of total rage and thought, well, this is one small thing I could do to address that. I think we have to understand that racism is in all of us somewhere. It's in our churches. It's so easy to say, well, our church doesn't have a problem. And I think we really need to be serious about where it starts with us. And I don't know what else I need to say about it right now.
Thank you. Are there questions for Jan about Standing Resolution 3? I don't see any. Let's proceed.
Thanks so much, Jan. Standing Resolution 4. Standing Resolutions 4 and 5. The spokesperson for those is Dee, who I haven't seen on the call tonight. In some of our exchanges, I think she was very happy to know that Claudia Roberts was on the planning to attend the Zoom tonight. Claudia, these are standing resolution number, let's see, number 4 is supporting Middle East peace efforts, and it's a renewal. And then standing resolution number 5 is boycotts, divestments, and sanctions, also a renewal. Claudia, did you want to say anything about SR 4 or 5 while you're with us tonight?
Sure, just briefly. Well, and one of the reasons she suggested I do this is I do serve on the Holy Land Task Force, of which Dee is the chairperson. So, and both of these are renewals in which there's been no changes made to them, but we still think that obviously there are ongoing issues in the Middle East, especially in between Israel and the Palestinians, and that a solution has not yet been found, but there are some new avenues opening up that maybe we can see more progress within our next quadrennium anyway. So we just wanted to keep this in the journal and on the minds and hearts of our congregations in our conference.
All right. Are there questions? I see none. So Adam, how are we doing?
Bishop, that concludes the packet as we've shared it with the Legislative Assembly.
All right. So let me just check. Does anybody have a lingering? We're ahead of schedule. So does anybody have a lingering question or something that came to your mind after we had passed the matter that you'd like clarification on this evening? I see Claudia.
Yes, I actually had submitted another resolution for renewal, which was on climate change.
Did you receive this, Adam?
Thanks, Claudia. I had sent you an email about that a little earlier tonight when I saw you mention it in passing, and I don't have anything on climate here, but is it a renewal as well?
Yes, it is. And maybe Ruth has it. Maybe I only sent it to her.
It's possible, but I don't believe I have it. It doesn't mean it didn't get to me and I managed to lose it. And so I can certainly look this evening in my emails and see if I got it, but I don't particularly remember that one coming, and I thought I got everything passed along to Adam, but I certainly could have missed it, and I apologize if that was the case, Claudia, because obviously climate change is an important thing for us as the people of God to be keeping in our heart and mind.
So Adam, is there a way for us to work with Claudia overnight?
I think that's very doable, especially because this is a renewal. I'm seeing in the email traffic, I see the email, Claudia, where you sent me the sanctuary resolution, and you also attached to that email a blank template SR. So I'm thinking that I think we may have caught where the where things went off the rails, and I suspect, yeah, especially with this being a renewal, it'll be an easy thing to address tomorrow.
Okay, well, I will send it to both of you as soon as I get off this meeting.
Thank you.
So this is
Thank
part of
you.
what the Legislative Assembly allows us to do, right? Is to figure
Yes.
out where there have been gaps and fill them in as best we can. So thank you for bringing this to us.
Claudia, if you could, although the template is a Word doc, sometimes, especially with a Mac, if that's what you're using, it will empty out something. Oh, okay. I was going to say, if you had a way to make that into a PDF, that would be a little more guaranteed that we got content inside of that. But if you're using a PC, it should be okay in the Word doc.
I probably just accidentally sent the blank form.
All right, let me ask again. Are there other questions, either about what to anticipate tomorrow or about what we have, how we have prepared this evening before we end? Yes,
Bishop?
Jan?
I just sent one, but you probably didn't even get a chance to look at it yet. I
here.
have a procedural question about the action request I submitted that has an incorrect web address on it. Does that need to be addressed as an amendment tomorrow, or can we do it as an editorial change?
If you bring it as an editorial change, I'll just test the body and make sure everybody's good with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I don't see anything else on my screen in the spreadsheet. Is there anything else this evening? You've been very attentive. You've asked good questions. You can see we have substantial work to do tomorrow, but you're up to it. We're all up to it. And so, Adam, let me just test back with you. Is there anything else that you're aware of that we need to tend to this evening?
I do not, I don't think so. Bishop, thank you all so much for your service tonight.
And I'm gonna quiz everybody, all those three primary, the primary team that I'm working with. Lori, is there anything that you're aware of that we need to tend to tonight? Okay. And Laura, Jake with Bartlett?
Well, I hate to be the outlier, but this is more just for information that Adam and Lori and I believe, immediately upon our break will work on pulling together those several pieces where we encountered something along the way where we said there will be a substitution or there's something that will make that more clear. We're going to put that all together into one PDF and we'll email it to you overnight. And I bring that up just so you all can be, the voting members can all be prepared and be expecting to see that and be ready with that for tomorrow.
Great. And I just want to emphasize again, some of the items before us tomorrow are pretty easy to understand. They're pretty straight ahead. And some of them are kind of technical and are about funny little corners of church life, administrative life that most of us never have to peer into. We just get to reap the benefits. So I encourage you to let this be also an educational opportunity. If there are things that are coming before us that you don't understand, but that you care about, be sure and bring your more questions and be prepared to discuss these in depth tomorrow. My agenda says that we adjourn with a blessing, but it doesn't say who. So is there anybody prepared to do this other than me? All right. Let's just sit and take a breath. And another. And a third. God grant us sweet and easy rest, so that we may awake and rise renewed in the morning to meet the challenges of the day. We pray in the name of Jesus Christ, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Thank you all. We're here at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Mountain time. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, everyone. So we will ask